Hello, my name is Makenzie Hallstrom. I use she, her pronouns, and I conducted my capstone internship with NOAA Fisheries over at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center. And the title of my presentation is Real Stories for Real Change, Storytelling for Social Justice at NOAA Fisheries. So for some background to my project, there is currently a lack of diversity across the fisheries science field, which includes NOAA Fisheries. And this has been attributed to many things, including poor representation of women and minorities. And to improve representation and inclusivity, studies point to storytelling with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion as a way to foster inclusivity and create a sense of belonging that's necessary for people from marginalized groups to feel like they're welcome within a professional environment. But DEI-based storytelling has never really been done before within NOAA. In fact, the first major project to do so is currently underway at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center. And this is the project that I worked with for my capstone internship. So for the aim of my independent research, I wanted to investigate strategies for NOAA fisheries to implement DEI-based storytelling moving forward. And this brings me to my research question, which is, what are the best practices for implementing storytelling as a tool to advance DEI goals within NOAA fisheries? And to answer my research question, I conducted two phases of research: a critical discourse analysis, which is a fancy way of saying I examined current storytelling use within the AFSC. And secondly, I conducted interviews with 4 professional storytellers and exhibit curators who specialize in DEI and marginalized narratives to investigate the best practices for storytelling implementation moving forward. And like I said, I interned at this project going on right now at the AFSC, which is a project to update an existing wall display for a prominent retired research vessel, the NOAA ship Miller Freeman. And the impetus for this exhibit update project was that the current exhibit omits the namesake's leadership in the anti-Japanese movement of the early 20th century. And so a new exhibit will be developed that discusses this history in full, and also, as a counterpoint to Miller Freeman, weaves in the story of the NOAA ship Bellum Shimada that was named after a Japanese-American NOAA fisheries scientist who, like 120,000 other Japanese Americans, was unjustly incarcerated during World War II. So that's the big project. And for my internship, I helped to digitize primary documents and develop service history timelines for both of these ships. And this picture in figure 1 is me hard at work scanning film slides of ships and fishermen from the 80s and 90s that will be used in the new exhibit. And for my results, I conducted a thematic analysis on my interviews, which kind of shook out into a 4-stage approach to implementing storytelling. And then to tailor that approach to NOAA fisheries, I've drawn together the information that came from my discourse analysis, as well as my experiences during my internship, into a sort of case study for this approach in action at the AFSC. And so the first step is to audit current storytelling for gaps and opportunities. So whose stories have been told, and are these stories engaging and accessible? And in the Miller Freeman exhibit, we have obviously this big omission of Miller Freeman's misdeeds, but also the exhibit itself is very static. It's not very engaging, and it's casual, but in a way that's only meaningful to a small group of people, so it's not very accessible. But we also have this really big opportunity here, which is that the ship is really well loved within the community, and there are a lot of untold stories from its prominent 40-year service history that haven't been told yet. So the second step is to identify marginalized stories within the community. So whose stories are not being told, and how can these stories be shared in ways that are meaningful? And the Miller Freeman Project is doing this by spotlighting the NOAA ship Bellum Shimada and its namesake, as well as doing a deep dive into the service histories of both ships and telling the stories of the people who have worked aboard them. The third step is to reorient these stories towards education and outreach. So asking, how can these stories be told in ways that are educational and that engage wider audiences? And in the words of one of the storytellers that I interviewed, what is the gift that these stories offer to the community? And in the AFSC project, the opportunity here is to create a discussion about the history of NOAA and the fisheries science community, as well as the history of the anti-Japanese movement and the incarceration, which is unfortunately a story that a lot of folks just don't know about. And finally, the last stage is to develop and deliver the new story. All of my interviewees stress the importance of each of these 4 elements that I have here in figure 4 to make DEI-based storytelling effective. So this looks like centering community voices and stories from people within the community, following traditional story structure and the idea that stories have a beginning, middle, and end, incorporating nuance and humanizing details that people can connect with, and using emotive visuals throughout the project. And right now, the project is doing a lot of this work, developing a cohesive storyline of the lives of the men and the ships, gathering stories and pictures from family and crew members. And then at the end, the goal is to have this story and exhibit that's holistic, engaging, visually interesting, and grounded in the real stories of community members so that this exhibit is really made by and for the community. And the implications of this work are firstly that it paves the way for future DEI-based storytelling projects within the community, and it offers a case study of this approach in action at NOAA Fisheries. Secondly, it frames DEI-based storytelling as a strategy for enhancing NOAA's outreach to marginalized communities. And finally, this work offers a strategy for NOAA Fisheries to look to its history to celebrate diversity and foster more inclusive environments moving forward. Special thanks to Lisa and the rest of the NOAA Heritage Project team, Dr. Dillon, and my friends and family for all their support throughout my capstone project. Thank you all so much.